Alright friends, so today I'm just going to briefly tell you about my Sigma FP rig and why and how it's absolutely perfect for what I need it to be. And it's so simple, so light, and such a powerhouse that the Sigma FP is actually even more than I need. It's above and beyond what I need. I'm shooting on a Canon C200 right now with the tried and true Sigma 1835, and that's after loving my Canon C100 Mark II for years, and before that also utilizing the Canon EOS R for a lot of videos, and before that Micro Four Thirds, the Lumix system, and well, that was the beginning. The G7, G85, GH4, those were my main cameras at the beginning of my film journey. But this Sigma FP is such a phenomenal little camera, and after having a spinal fusion, after having back surgery, I couldn't lug around anything really even DSLR size or larger like the C200, the C100 Mark II. Well, I also had a red a red Scarlet X Mysterium. And all of those put too much pressure on my back after a while, so I needed something with a small form factor. Enter in the Sigma FP, and also enter in Caleb DSLR Shooter's video on his tiny little cinema camera. Saw that video and I was just in awe. Said, perfect. That's exactly what I need. Then I also watched another video by a YouTuber named Michael Bennett, which I will link down in the description below, both of those videos. So I took elements from both of those videos to build my Sigma FP rig, and I did change some things that I thought would be a little bit more suitable for my use. First off is the cage. If you notice, this is the XLCS cage, and I love this cage. Frankly, this cage to me is the only cage I would want for the Sigma FP. It has so many mounting options, so many different configurations. I got the expanded kit, so it has like everything included with it. And right now I just have this little E bracket here, but I do have the locks for the USB-C and HDMI, micro HDMI cables. I've got the side attachment here for the microphone, so if I'm just breaking it down just with the camera and I want external audio, I can have that. I've got every other configuration possible with it. I am running it off NPF batteries using the Atomos Shinobi 2 monitor, which I actually love this monitor. It's touchscreen, and I've got really no complaints over this monitor. I know a lot of people that are maybe more deep into cinematography and have more preferences. I've always been on the other side of the camera. I've always been a model, actor, musician, and so I have my preferences, but my preferences are not quite as preferential as some other people's, and this suits me just great. Another monitor option that I love is the Portkeys PT5 Mark II. I've got that going on the Fujifilm XM5 build that I'm doing right now. But I wanted to keep everything so small and light and tiny, and I did this intentionally. So the lens that I wanted to go with, I wanted it to be as small and compact as possible, manual focus, at least f2. Because again, the Sigma being full frame, at least f2 would give me the depth of field that I wanted to achieve. So I get that from this tiny little TT Artisans 50 millimeter manual focus f2.0 lens. And the reason this is so great is because I can just take this lens, and the way that I shoot a lot of the time is like this. Overhand on the top handle, focusing with my left hand. And that's because I also have a lot of nerve damage down this arm from some things that have happened to this arm, and my handheld footage can tend to be pretty shaky. I've found that if I stay like this and kind of collapse on the camera, it stays a little steadier, and I keep the battery against my chest. And I do have an NPF plate back here, so I can put a smaller NPF battery if it's just a quick little shoot. And the material that I shoot is just very short. I am a bodybuilding and addiction recovery coach for over 25 years. So most of our work is talking head in the studio, and I interview certain people here and there. But we have been getting more into some client brand work, just short videos for them, where because of my experience in my industry as an addiction recovery coach, when I visit certain brands, they have a lot of questions for me, especially about a product called Kratom, which I am heavily involved in internationally. And so having something just like this in this tiny little form factor that I can keep in a tiny, small bag, portable, in the car, locked up, and grab whenever I need it, knowing that because I've got plenty of NPF batteries, because I have a Samsung T7 SSD on here, I have everything I need right here. This one little lens is perfect. I've got tiny little NATO rails here. I can take the monitor off if I want to very easily. It can break down in seconds into a much smaller form factor. I can break it down to just the camera in a matter of 30 seconds. And in fact, let me show you that right now. I would ideally like to shorten this section of cable here. I've got to cut that, solder that together, and then we will get rid of that whole coiled section, and then this cable will run directly there. So that's next to complete really cable management. It's really all I'm concerned about because I don't mind the USB. This is a high-speed USB-C cord, which makes sure if you are using an SSD, you do have a cord that can, a USB-C to USB-C that can handle the data, the bandwidth being transferred, because I did go through a couple cords that couldn't, even though they claimed to. And the camera itself is running off a dummy battery going to the NPF sled. And then the monitor, I can run off the NPF battery as well with the USB-C, but because I have so many NPF batteries, it's just kind of easier to do this. It's one less cable. This configuration is so simple, but let's just say we want to get rid of the monitor. We can get rid of the sled. Let's get rid of the sled in 2 seconds. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Sled is gone. Okay. Now, sled is off, and what we can do is pop in an actual battery, because the XLCS cage is perfectly designed when it's not on any other type of base plate. You can still open up the battery and the SD card door and access everything easily. No matter what, you're using your fingernails to get the SD card out. It's just inevitable with that tiny little space, but they did think of everything. I love the XLCS cage because they really did think of everything possible. And if you notice that tiny little cutout, that's so that you can actually have a little bit of space for your fingernails to grab that SD card out. But now, I mean, I'm right here at the camera. Now I have the camera. And I can shoot, grab some pictures if I want to, take some photos in between video footage. And if I want to just remove the monitor, that comes off in 2 seconds. The monitor is off. Cable is out. There's the camera. There's the camera. I've got a top handle because I like to carry things around with a top handle because of the nerve damage down my arms. I was stabbed here by the elbow years ago, and so a lot of the times I have numbness in my arm, plus I have 2 bulged vertebrae up here and spinal fusion, obviously, and a TBI, a brain injury. So between all of those things, I can get a little shaky here and there. This is just great. This is perfect. This is an awesome form factor. And again, like I said, we can just take the dummy battery out and put in one of the other batteries, which battery life is not fantastic for video. But if you're not, if you're not worried about shooting raw in MOV, you can get some great footage with the battery on an SD card, and it works great. So, and the same thing here with the handle, the top handle. I have the nitsy little stinger on a NATO rail, and there we go. We're down to the camera and the cage. And we can shoot all day like this. This, to me, is really ideal, and I can reconfigure this with a different base plate that I have for one of the other setups so that I can run V-mount batteries instead if I want for like a longer day, or if I know that we're gonna be doing 2 stops or 3 stops along the way, I will swap it out and then use a V-mount instead. But that's it. So there's basically 3 components. The camera with the XLCS cage, obviously dummy battery hanging off of it. The Atomos Shinobi 2 monitor with small rig NATO rail mount. And then this is the sled design, more or less, that Caleb from DSLR Shooter came up with, or at least he put together. And it is just a DPL. I went with the DPL 115. Caleb used the DPL 100 base, which is a little bit shorter than the DPL 115, obviously. So I went with the DPL 115, and then I did modify the DPL 100 for another use situation. I wanted space between the screen of my camera and my SSD holder. So I have about an inch of space between them. I did not want it smushed all the way up because I can also throw in a transmitter here if we're doing a wireless monitoring setup, and it fits perfectly fine, doesn't scratch or come near the screen. The SSD holder that I went with is a Fanao, and obviously it's just a Chinese Amazon special. But I like this one specifically because it actually is a little easier to take in and out. And I know that no matter what, it's lined up every time. And then obviously the NPF sled. So you can throw your NPF batteries on there, but I can take that NPF sled off and just put a V-mount backing plate that I have and start using V-mounts. So those are the 3 components. And then with this one, I went with the Nitsy Mini Stinger handle. That tiny little small rig handle, if you've caught Caleb's video, I had that handle on hand and I put it on and it is just too small. I mean, I wear a size large glove, and that little small rig handle, you cannot put a pinky on it at all. You can only get 3 fingers on it. I like to have something where my pinky is on it because that pinky does add a lot of balance. So, again, when putting all of this together very simply, handle, NATO rail, that's on. And I will tell you this, if you notice, the little stinger does not allow both of the small rig NATO rail locking pins to come up. So only one pin can get locked. It's just like a millimeter too wide. It's kind of ridiculous, but I could shave it a little bit off and make it fit, but no need to, because you do have the lock in the front, so no matter what, it's not going anywhere. And I do want to mention that on the camera, this is the smallest NATO rail that I could find, and it does have RE locating pins on it, and the XLCS cage has lots of, I mean, like so many holes for RE locating pins around the body that it's really awesome. I love how they thought of everything. So we've got top panel on. Let's lock that down. Then again, on the front of the top handle, also another tiny little small rig, single NATO rail with RE locating pins. And we get the monitor on. Monitor's locked on. We could roll around just like this if we want to. HDMI cable, the way that I run this. Currently, because again I haven't soldered it yet, I haven't cut the cable, is I just run one of the coils flat through these tiny little small rig cable holders. Cleans everything up, and that guy goes to a flat 90 micro HDMI, which I hate because I have had them fail on me before, just over time. I think that we should be out of micro HDMI, but what are you gonna do? All right, so then we'll throw on our base plate, which is just a NATO rail base plate. And again, I went with the DPL 115 rather than the 100, just for a little extra length. Who doesn't want a little extra length? Just saying. Straighten that out. Okay. All right, we're on. That's it. Plug in our USB-C. We're good for the drive. And now for the dummy battery, we just kind of tuck that coiled section in there. Nothing to scrape, nothing to scratch. Don't have to worry about that. And plugged in, and we're good to go. That's it. It's all set. And it's so light. It's just so freaking light, perfectly balanced, so easy to use, so simple to run around with. Monitor's touchscreen, lens is tiny, and it still gets everything that I want. And even with the nerve damage I have down my arm, I can hold this thing out, and it's just so light. So that's it. Any questions, feel free to drop a line in the comment section. But that's our tiny little Sigma FP rig, and it works great. So stay tuned, because the next video will be about the Fujifilm XM5 mini cinema rig that we're doing just like this, but in a slightly different configuration for a slightly different use. And I'm excited to show you that one because I am definitely a Fujifilm fan. I've been using Fujifilm cameras ever since the X-T1 came out. Still have, love, and every once in a while pull out my X-T1 just for nostalgia. Just sold my XH1 rig to make room for an XH2 or XH2S, depending on which I go with. Probably the XH2 to be strictly for photography, mostly for photography. Because currently, like I said, most talking head studio work, we shoot on the Canon C200. And run and gun, we've got the Sigma FP, and now the Fujifilm XM5. I'm also considering a Lumix S9 or a Sony, possibly A7C Mark 1 or 2, or a ZVE 10 or ZVE 1. There's a lot of options out there. I'm considering all those different options. I do love Lumix stuff. I started my whole film journey shooting Lumix. My first good video-based camera was the Lumix GH4. And then I got a G7 and a G85 to work with that. And in fact, I shot this video here for my son with just the G7, because that's all I had on hand where at that time in that place, and two small lights for a music video that he created for a song that he wrote. And it's a great song, actually, and it's a lot of fun to shoot the video. You'll see what it was about. It's called Virus. It was at the time where we were obviously all under lockdown. So I shot that with just a G7 on a gimbal with two tiny little cheap lights, two manual focus, very inexpensive vintage lenses. Thought I had them around, but I don't know where they are. Probably in storage. But that's another time and place. So that's it for today, friends. That is our Sigma FP run and gun baby little cinema rig. I love it for what it is. Couldn't be happier. All right, stay tuned for the Fujifilm XM5 version of this. I think you're going to like it. See you in the next one. Let's deal with the valley, the hills